Listen, us pedantic bookworms, we gotta stick together. I am of the personal opinion that the Wizard Subclasses in Pathfinder 2nd Edition are some of the best examples of RPG design that I have ever seen, and today I'm going to talk about why on this episode of The Local Disaster Tour Guide. Hello travelers and tourists, my name is Mark and I am the Local Disaster Tour Guide. That's right, I am a storyteller who could probably write an actual thesis if I wasn't so busy obsessing over Arcane Thesis. Welcome to a journey into the fantastic world of RPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today, I'm going to be talking about why I believe that Paizo's Wizard Subclass design in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is one of the best examples of RPG design that I have ever seen. Seriously, I love how Paizo chose to approach the Wizard Subclass design in this game, and completely truthfully, I think Paizo has produced the best version of a wizard in a fantasy RPG that I have ever seen. But let's go ahead and be honest about what this video is. I'm not just talking about why I like the Wizard Subclass design, I'm also doing a response to another video that I have seen. About a week and a half ago, the channel NoNat1's put out a video where NoNat talks about why he thinks that the Wizard Subclasses are, honestly, not that good. It was kind of strange for me to watch NoNat's video, because he and I have come to radically different conclusions about the Wizard Subclass design. Where he sees very poor subclasses, I see excellent subclasses, and I thought that this actually presented a good opportunity to have a discussion about what makes for good versus bad subclass design in an RPG. So today I'm going to be responding to NoNat's video about Wizard Subclasses, and I'm going to be offering a defense about why I think Paizo has actually done a fantastic job in developing subclasses for the Wizard class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, since this is a response video, let me go ahead and lay down 3 ground rules. Number 1, NoNat is a fantastic content producer. I love his channel and he does a great job for the community. This video is not intended as a way of undercutting NoNat. I may not know him personally, but NoNat seems like a genuinely wonderful guy, and he's one of those people that I would probably love to meet at Gen Con one day and just talk shop. So to that effect, please understand that this video is not an attack on NoNat. I may disagree with one of his videos, but overall he is a fantastic content producer. To that point, while I realize that NoNat's channel is much larger than mine, so the odds that you haven't seen his video are probably pretty low, I'm still going to throw a link to his video up here because I want you to hear NoNat's argument in his own words. I don't want to debate a straw man version of the argument that he presents, so if you have not seen NoNat's video, I strongly encourage you check that video out and then come back and check out the response that I am giving. The final rule that I want to put in place is this, to my Disaster Tour Guide community, you guys are amazing, and please continue to be amazing in any comments that you give on this video or on this topic. I invite you to be a part of the conversation, and you can disagree with my points, you can disagree with NoNat's points, but please refrain from making personal attacks. I have been amazed at just how warm and awesome of a community that I have found since I started this YouTube channel, so I know you guys will do fantastic here, but please understand if I see any toxic personal attacks, I will delete them. So with that in mind, let's dive into this debate. Are the Wizard Subclasses in Pathfinder 2nd Edition some of the best examples of RPG design ever, or some of the worst? Now, if I had to summarize NoNat's video, I would probably say that the easiest way to write out his argument would sound something like this. The Arcane Thesis class feature given to wizards in Pathfinder 2nd Edition are ultimately weak and unimpactful on play, leading to some of the worst subclass design in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. NoNat spends a lot of time diving into the arcane theses that are available to wizards in Pathfinder 2e, and over again he seems to zero in on the idea that the arcane thesis as a subclass is just not very impactful, not very strong, or that it doesn't come up enough to really qualify as a good subclass. And by the way, to NoNat's credit, it is clear that in his commentary on the arcane thesis and on wizard subclasses that NoNat cares about the wizard class. He enjoys playing wizards, he enjoys that archetype, that character concept, and it's clear that he wants the wizard to be well represented mechanically so that it will be appealing to people in actual play. Well, it's also my favorite fantasy archetype through my gaming career, so I actually share NoNat's desire to see the wizard well represented. The difference between NoNat and I is primarily that I think that wizards are well represented in Pathfinder 2e where he does not. In fact, if you were to summarize the counterpoint I will make with this video, it would sound like this. The Arcane Thesis class feature is not the Wizard subclass, and should not be evaluated as such. So that's the point I'm going to try to make today, and I'm going to try to make this point in 3 specific steps. First, I'm going to try to convince you that the Arcane Thesis class feature for wizards is not the subclass for wizards and was not intended to be the subclass for wizards in this version of the game. Second, I'm actually going to spend some time talking about what I think is intended to be the wizard subclass in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and by extension, I will talk about why I think the wizard subclass design in Pathfinder 2e is so strong. Third, last but not least, I will come back to the Arcane Thesis class feature specifically that NoNat spent so much time diving into. I will come back to the Arcane Theses and offer another look at them to see if maybe NoNat missed some of the benefits that they do bring the wizard class in play. So let's get going. Point number 1. The Arcane Thesis class feature for wizards is not intended to be the wizard subclass in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Allow me to present some evidence. This is the playtest that Paizo put out for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This was their original test concept of the game, and if you look up the wizard in the playtest for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, one of the things that you will notice is the Arcane Thesis doesn't exist. The Arcane Thesis class feature for wizards was not an original part of Pathfinder 2nd Edition's design. It was something that was added after the playtest was over. Now really quick, if you look at the wizard in the playtest for Pathfinder 2e, it does have subclasses, and we'll get into that here in a moment, but I just want to emphasize for a moment that the Arcane Thesis was added at the end of the playtest process, not because wizards needed a subclass, but actually because wizards needed to not be so boring. Okay, I guess I shouldn't say it that way. If you listen to the commentary from Paizo after the Pathfinder 2e playtest, one of the things they said is that the wizards ranked very strong in terms of overall power level. People thought that wizards were a very powerful class, and there is a long tangent I could probably go on that topic, but we'll skip that for now. The playtesters really didn't have a problem with the strength of the wizard class, they had a problem with the flavor of the wizard class. The wizard class just wasn't engaging in terms of the flavor inside of the game. And so when Paizo was developing their final version of Pathfinder 2nd Edition, they added the Arcane Thesis, not because the wizard needed distinct subclasses for play inside of the game, but because the wizard needed additional flavor to help solidify the character concepts that it represented and its role inside of the game world. In fact, this addresses one of the main points that NoNat went back to several times in examining the Arcane Thesis. He kept talking about how he felt that the Arcane Theses weren't impactful, that they were essentially weak class features. And If you look at why Arcane Theses were added, they were added to a class that already felt powerful but needed flavor. The Arcane Theses are not designed to add to the wizard's power level, they're designed to add to the wizard's flavor. I know I'm kind of harping on that point, so we'll move on, but just understand that when you look at the Arcane Thesis, you are not looking at the actual subclasses for wizard in the game. Something else is going to qualify for the wizard subclasses. So that brings us to point number 2. What is the actual wizard subclass in Pathfinder 2nd edition? Well, again, if we were to look into the playtest book, we would see that the Pathfinder 2nd edition wizard came with 2 distinct class features at the start of the game. It came with Arcane Focus, which was the first version of Arcane Bond, and then it came with the Arcane School class feature as well. And by the way, for some historical reference, the Pathfinder 1st edition wizard also had Arcane Bond and Arcane School as distinct class features. Seeing as Arcane Bond and Arcane School are so prominent in the history of the wizard class for Paizo, 1st edition to playtest to actual published 2nd edition rules, it would seem that the more logical label for the wizard subclass is either Arcane Bond or, probably more likely for most people, Arcane School. But that is not the precise argument that I'm going to make here. You see, Arcane Bond, Arcane School, and even the Arcane Thesis that NoNat originally discussed all seem to play a role in defining the wizard class in Pathfinder 2nd edition, and that's why I say that the Pathfinder 2nd edition wizard doesn't have a defined subclass, but rather you build your subclass for your wizard in Pathfinder 2e. This is rather unique. This is a very, very interesting take on subclass design. The wizard has these 3 different components: Arcane Bond, Arcane School, Arcane Thesis, and the wizard gets to take these components and mix and match them and build something that is truly unique. In Pathfinder 2nd edition, the wizard is the most academic take on spellcasting. If you want to imagine a character who has actually gone to school and mastered magic, the wizard is the class that has that particular flavor. And these 3 features kind of represent the academic specialization that occurs in an institution of higher learning. When you go to college, you have a major, you might have a minor. You often end up writing an actual thesis paper. I think, by the way, that's a cool part of the wizard design. You have written an actual book or paper that is published in the game world. The wizard gets to take these 3 different things and they get to build something that is truly unique. They are specialized in magic in a way that no other wizard, or at the very least, very, very few other wizards, will ever be specialized. By the way, this is something that doesn't normally happen with subclasses. Usually in any role-playing game, and it's true in a lot of Pathfinder 2nd edition as well, when you pick a subclass, your subclass decides which features and benefits you're going to get. So if I decide to play a bard in Pathfinder 2nd edition and I pick the Enigma Muse, I am going to get very specific features because of the subclass that I picked. I pick the subclass and then that fills out my character sheet. The same thing is true if I pick an Animal Instinct Barbarian or an Angelic Bloodline Sorcerer. In each of those cases, you pick the subclass first, and then it defines the different elements of your character, but the wizard actually does this in reverse, and this is one of the big reasons I absolutely love wizard subclass design. You get the elements, and then you get to combine them in whatever way you want, and develop something that is unique to you. Wizards are one of the few classes that I have ever seen in an RPG anywhere where they really have so much say over what their subclass is. In fact, one of the few other classes that comes close would be the Witch class from the APG in Pathfinder 2nd edition. I love this idea that a wizard gets to decide what their arcane bond looks like, and then they get to decide which arcane school they want to specialize in, And then they get to decide which thesis they decided to write, and they get to combine this into a unique class. But as much as I love this aspect of how the Wizard Subclass design works, it doesn't address what is one of NoNat's major points, which is this ultimately effective and impactful on gameplay? From everything I've put forward so far, you probably know the next point I'm going to make. The Arcane Thesis may appear to be weak or ineffectual inside of the game, but that's because the Arcane Thesis is only one part of the overall subclass. If you take the bonuses from Arcane Bond, Arcane School, and Arcane Thesis and put them together, you get very powerful and impactful subclasses in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Now, deep diving into all of the subclasses in Pathfinder 2e is beyond the scope of this video. Really quick, I'm going to throw some examples of what you get from Pathfinder 2nd Edition subclasses at level 1. These are just a few comparisons that you can look at while I'm talking about what you get from the Wizard Build Your Own Subclass concept. You will notice that I am only posting spellcaster subclasses here because I think that's the most fair comparison when we're talking about the Wizard. And you will notice that there is a variety of what subclasses offer at level 1 in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Some subclasses give you a lot, other subclasses give you very little, but here's kind of a range you can look at. Now let's talk about what the Wizard subclass gives you. First up is Arcane Bond. Now I do realize some people will think that it's controversial that I am including Arcane Bond as part of the Wizard subclass system because Arcane Bond only has one mechanical effect, which is the Drain Bonded item feature. Yes, it is true, all Arcane Bonds have the same mechanical impact on the game, though depending on your Arcane Thesis that does switch up a little bit here and there. But the reason I include this as part of the Wizard subclass system is you get to decide what your Arcane Bond is. The difference between a magical ring and an ancestral weapon Arcane Bond may not be mechanically different, but the flavor difference inside of the game is going to be very powerful. Your wizard gets to define which item they have invested their magic into, and I do think that is impactful enough to qualify as being part of the Wizard subclass. And Drain Bonded item is really powerful. As a wizard, you get the ability to just repeat a spell that you have cast earlier in the course of the day. One of the difficult things about playing a prepared spellcaster is once you use the spell, it's gone. And so that kind of leads to this tension of, is now the right time to throw out my spell or should I save it? Wizards, through the Drain Bonded item feature, get the ability to recall a spell if they maybe threw it out a little bit too early in the day, or if they ended up needing more than one use of it. It's not quite as powerful as spontaneous casters in this regard, but the other prepared spellcasters in Pathfinder 2e are probably pretty jealous of this ability. Now let's move on to the heavy hitter of the Wizard subclass system, which is the Arcane School feature. The Arcane School feature is 9 different potential options. That's pretty impressive, Paizo. And at first level, arguably the weakest choice would be the Universalist Arcane School. At first level, the Universalist is going to give you a bonus wizard class feat and a bonus spell known that's added to your spellbook. That's not a lot at first level. At higher levels, they get more uses of Drain Bonded item, which is powerful, but arguably at first level, the Universalist subclass is not going to be as giving as the other arcane schools, which are going to give you bonus spell slots, bonus spells known in your spellbook, and a focus spell and focus point to use for that spell. And then we go to the Arcane Thesis, which, as we mentioned, is not intended to be the most mechanically impactful, but will offer you the familiar feat and extra familiar abilities, or access to more meta magic options, or the ability to play around with your spell slots, or even your own free mini staff that you can upgrade throughout the course of the game. Now, let's take these things together for a minute. Let's go with the least giving variation, which is the Universalist Wizard. you're going to have Drain Bonded Item, an extra class feat, an extra spell known, and then a fourth effect from your Arcane Thesis. Maybe a meta magic feat, maybe the ability to play around with spell slots. But overall, as a wizard, the least giving subclass combination is going to come with 4 distinct mechanical benefits inside the game. And let's just go ahead and say that the mechanical impact of those benefits added together is going to be impactful for your wizard in play. Sure, if you take any of those mechanical benefits by themselves, they may not be the most impactful in the game, but when you add those benefits together, I promise you, you're going to get some serious usage out of them. So yes, if you look at the Meta Magic Experimentation Arcane Thesis in isolation, yeah, it's going to look weak, but it's going to look weak because it's only part of the package. You have to put all of the elements together to see the full strength of the Build Your Own Subclass system. Deep diving every possible combination of every spellcasting class in the game, I've already noted well beyond the scope of this video, so let's just talk general numbers real quick. The typical spellcasting class in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is going to have between 2 to 7 mechanically distinct abilities at level 1. And for most spellcasting classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, 1 to 5 of those mechanically distinct abilities will come from the spellcaster's subclass. So if we take that typical range of a spellcasting subclass offering 1 to 5 distinct mechanical benefits, we see that the Universalist Wizard is going to come with 4 distinct mechanical benefits from their subclass, and the Specialist Wizard is going to come with 5 distinct mechanical benefits from their subclass, all of this at level 1. The reality is the Wizard subclass system is on par with what we would expect from spellcasters inside of this game. So I imagine I could probably leave the arguments for this video there, because I feel like I've done a pretty good job of highlighting what the intended Wizard subclasses are in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But there is one more thing I'd like to talk about in this video, which is the Arcane Theses themselves. While I don't think that the Arcane Thesis is intended to be a major aspect of the Wizard's overall power level, I do feel like NoNat has missed some of the value that these different options bring for someone who is playing a Wizard. So, really quick, I would like to examine these different Arcane Thesis options and talk about why I think they are valuable for Wizard players. So, these Arcane Theses are not intended to raise the Wizard's overall power level, but they are designed to make the Wizard more flexible. And as I've said many times on this channel, in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, flexibility over the long run is very important to being effective in play. You may not use flexible options every game, but there are definitely going to be situations where you want them and need them, and they bring a lot of value when those situations arise. NoNat seems to evaluate the Arcane Theses on their power level rather than the flexibility that they provide, and I think that's the reason he misses how good these options can be. For example, when he evaluates the Meta Magic Experimentation Arcane Thesis, he basically just says, at level 20 you can pick up the Quick Spell Meta Magic feat, and that's your best option, so that's the only one that's worthwhile. That is hardly the case at all. Meta Magic Experimentation gives you a bonus Meta Magic feat at first level, and at 4th level gives you another bonus Meta Magic feat that you can switch out every single day, equal to half of your overall character level. So at 4th level you get a 2nd level Meta Magic feat, and your options will slowly scale as your character progresses. But these are intended to be flexible options, things that you can switch out during play. Even that 1st level Meta Magic feat, Reach Spell or Widen Spell, you're not stuck with those options. Retraining is part of the core rules in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, so if your 1st level Meta Magic Experimentation Thesis Wizard took the Reach Spell feat because they prefer to cast spells at a distance, well, when your DM starts dropping hints about the Gathering Goblin Horde, spend a week of downtime switching it out for the Widen Spell Meta Magic feat, And suddenly your AoE attacks are going to be a lot more effective when that comes up in play. Metamagic experimentation is not there to make the wizard super powerful, it's there to make the wizard more flexible. And that is true of all of the Arcane Thesis options. Now, I have seen where NoNat has admitted that he misevaluated the Staff Nexus Arcane Thesis option, and he basically has said he didn't realize that you can later properly upgrade your staff where it functions as a normal staff, and so that caused him to misevaluate there. But I want you to notice at first level, Staff Nexus gives you an extra cantrip, that's more flexibility in what you can do, and then as you progress through play, it gives you more and more options as a wizard. It makes you more flexible. Is your overall power level higher? Not really. But do you have more flexible options? Yes. And that is a really good thing. Another one of the Arcane Theses is spell blending, which lets you play around with spell slots. You can switch spell slots out and use them for different things. It is more flexibility as a caster. And NoNat actually said he liked spell blending, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time arguing for it, but just notice this pattern. Each option in Arcane Thesis is intended not to give the wizard more of a punch, but to give the wizard more options in play. Next, let's talk about the improved Familiar Attunement Arcane Thesis. It gives you the familiar class feat and then gives you extra familiar abilities as you level up. And again, this is literally just making your wizard more flexible. Familiars are one of those fun options that can be really flexible inside of the game. They're not intended for combat. Pathfinder 2nd Edition basically spells that out for you. But when you're looking for non-combat options, familiars can be a lot of fun. And Paizo even designed familiars where you can change out their abilities every single day. I have a sorcerer player who has a familiar feat, and they have switched out their familiar abilities several times to respond to whatever situation they were in. Improved Familiar Attunement is all about flexibility. By the way, NoNat kind of comes down on Improved Familiar Attunement because your familiar replaces your bonded item, and according to him, the familiar is easier to kill than the bonded item is to break. That's fair, but I would like to point out that the familiar is also easier to replace than the item is to repair. And if Drain Bonded Item is one of the most powerful things you can do as a wizard, I have to say, I really like the idea that my familiar is intelligent and mobile where a bonded item is not. If somebody steals my wizard staff, I'm out of luck, but my wizard familiar may be able to get back to me, allowing me to make use of the class ability. So it's not as rough as NoNat makes it out to be. And then last but not least is the one Arcane Thesis that I honestly feel like Paizo made a mistake including in the game, which is spell substitution. As a wizard, you can change out the spells you prepare. You don't need the spell that's in that spell slot. Switch it out for something else. It just takes 10 minutes. Now, in Pathfinder 1st Edition, all wizards could do this, and as someone who played wizards all the time, I did this all the time. NoNat says that his player has only used this ability once inside of his game, and I imagine that's probably true, but that may be because the player in question just hasn't seen the opportunities to use it. I guarantee you, over the course of an extended campaign, the ability to switch out spells is very, very impactful for wizards. Honestly, spell substitution is so good, I have a hard time justifying taking any of the other Arcane Theses because I have seen in previous editions of this game how powerful that ability truly is. When NoNat was evaluating the Arcane Theses, he ultimately makes two errors. First, he assumes that the Arcane Thesis is the whole Wizard subclass, and we've already seen that that is not true. But second, when he evaluates them for impact on gameplay, he seems to evaluate impact by overall power level, when the reality is each of these theses is designed to make your wizard more flexible. You may not use your wizard's thesis ability every game session, but those occasions where your wizard needs more flexible options, you're going to appreciate that they're there. So anyways, that is my response to NoNat and his evaluation of Wizard Subclasses. But it's time to turn the conversation over to you. What do you think? Do you agree with my assessment of Wizard Subclasses? And do you think that they are phenomenal examples of RPG design? Or are you more inclined to agree with NoNat in his evaluation of Wizard Subclasses? Where do you fall in this debate? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Though again, a quick reminder, please no personal attacks. The purpose here is to discuss game design, not to attack other people. I may disagree with NoNat on this, but I am still looking forward to his next video. I can't wait to see what he's going to put out there. And truthfully, I can't wait to hear what your thoughts are on this subject as well, so definitely be a part of the conversation. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for being here and have a wonderful day.